welcome back to Talking with Trish. And today I have on one of my favorite people, author Amelia Cotter. Hello, Amelia. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Trish?
I'm good. I'm caffeinated, so we're good.
That's all we can hope for.
That's
Yes, I am as well. Yeah,
my first question is when and how did your interest in the paranormal start?
sure. So, my interest in the paranormal started when I was a little kid. Um, I love to go to the library. We also lived, when I was very little, we lived next to a cemetery in Westminster, Maryland, and my
Ooh.
mom would take me on walks through the cemetery. It was kind of like on the way home and on the way to the store. We would walk through the cemetery. I don't actually have a memory of that, but I
Hmm.
remember my mom talking about it enough that I'm sure, like, I remember being in like my little red wagon, kind of like those little 80s red wagons.
Right.
So I feel like that put that spirit in me. No pun intended, but I love to go
Yeah.
to the library. My parents liked spooky stuff a lot too, like ghost stories and things. The family was always, there was a family gathering. People would tell some ghost stories or something like that. Um, and so before I could even read, I would be in the occult section, as it was called when we were little, just looking through those big, like coffee table, like Time Life books that were like, the poltergeists or aliens or haunted houses. And I just started with this love of the unknown from a very young age.
What do you think are some of your favorite horror or paranormal books that you read when you were younger?
Oh, so my very favorite ones were the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark series.
I love that. And you were in a documentary talking about that, weren't you? Because I
I
saw some of
was.
that. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a documentary about it that came out, I think, in 2019, that was sort of like a celebration of the books and sort of a case study into the banning of the books and the reception of the books over time. And the director, he interviewed some of like Alvin Schwartz's descendants, and he interviewed R.L. Stein, and then he pulled in other authors and storytellers and people to kind of like, we all sort of talked about our nostalgia for the books and talked about like the role of like folklore in our lives when we were kids, because I remember being very spooked and but just so fascinated with those books and those illustrations. Those were like core memories for me.
Right. And I think that had that effect on a lot of people because the stories just alone by themselves, I think, are very creepy, especially the way some of them just end. But those illustrations are so haunting. I actually
Yeah.
loved when they did kind of their own thing when they made a film of it, but I did love seeing the kind of practical effects that they used to try to make some of those monsters come to life. The Pale Lady I think was my
You
favorite
know,
just because yeah.
yeah, I loved that too. And I was waiting. I think we were all waiting and waiting because there was supposed to be a whole series and a sequel. And I don't know
Right.
if that got derailed from COVID or whatever, but I was like, we never found out. So the little boy, or I guess the teenage boy, whoever, got kind of like sucked into her at the end. So we never got to see where he went and what his story arc was, or his friends that presumably
Right.
were going to go rescue him and whatever netherworld he ended up in. And so I'm like still waiting on my sequel to that, even though there are probably all like 30 now.
Right. Well, they did leave it off on a cliffhanger for those kids, and they were definitely talking about making a sequel. And the last time that I looked into it, it just keeps saying that everything is up in the air, that they still want to do it. I don't know if it's something to do with
Right.
rights or if the director is doing something. I'm not sure what
Yeah.
it is, but I really hope that it's still coming because there's so many more stories obviously that they could adapt. I loved what they did with Harold, obviously, even though they changed that scarecrow story because that
Yeah.
the they I don't know if they could ever because they were trying to go. to specifically like a teen and like a kid audience with that film, so they didn't do anything rated R, but if they tried to do like the actual Harold story, it would be R rated and it would be so haunting.
Right.
Like it's
I think,
terrifying.
right, I feel like they were capitalizing on that like post, that new like Stranger Things 80s um nostalgia, but it was still aimed at kids. Like I feel like they did that with the It movies too. So it was like
Right.
the audio, we are of a different generation, but then they wanted to pull in this new generation. So yeah, I feel like if somebody went for broke, like the Winnie the Pooh people, the Blood and Honey people, they'd
Yeah.
get in there and just like make a real scorcher with these
Ex
characters.
exactly. No, like because I got into scary stories to tell in the dark actually fairly late. I think because like around the time they started becoming popular, like my I think my sister had read them. I got into like Goosebumps and stuff after her, and I didn't really discover scary stories until I was like way older. And as soon as I opened up the book, I was like, oh my God, I remember these a little bit. I think they scared me so much that I like saw some of the illustrations and was like, oh, nope. And then I never went
We're
back.
like, nope, blocked.
That's too
Yeah.
much. But what?
That's funny. I read them in reverse because I did those first and then Goosebumps came later for me. But I
Really?
loved Goosebumps too. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually I don't remember reading too many of the books. I know my sister owned quite a few of them, but I remember being into the show and then kind of going back at some of the books because I know that some of the stuff they changed the endings or they had because everybody has their own way of adapting stuff. So some of the episodes of the TV show they weren't exactly like the stories they were based on. Um so yeah, that but I loved that kind of
Yeah.
stuff when I was little. And Goosebumps is like it's kind of like gateway horror where it's not really it's kind of more cheesy and fun than it is scary. Some of it was a little creepy, but like I
Yeah,
loved that.
they toe the line, right? Yeah. Yeah, they
I
kind of um I like how they, because I read a few of them last year, like just for fun to kind of get back into it.
mhm.
And I found myself being like, because I was like, man, I was also like disturbed by some of these when I was a kid, and then I was like, oh, okay, these aren't quite as bad as like you can read scary stories again and be like, oh Lord, this is very
Yeah.
visceral. Um, but I did appreciate that they like R.L. Stein like left those dark themes to like we'll let the kids, finish the thought kind of. Yeah.
Right. And I know that I don't know if you've ever heard of a show called Are You Afraid of the Dark, but that was what I really grew up loving when I was younger, and it was very much along the lines of like Goosebumps and stuff, but it was a lot darker and it was made for Nickelodeon and a lot of the places that it was shot, I think it was shot in Canada and so was Goosebumps, so there was a lot of like overlap between the actors and stuff, so a lot of them would be on one
Yeah.
episode of one and then but I grew up on both of those things and that was kind of my start to it and I really didn't
I
get into
remember. Yeah. No,
um
go ahead. Sorry. I'm like,
no, I'm sorry. I completely lost my thoughts. I completely
no.
lost my thought.
I had to mute myself because I was sniffling. My
Oh, you're okay.
allergies are so bad right now. They're so
Mine
bad.
too. Mine too.
Oh my, it just never ends. But no, I remember like there was like Snick, I think, and my mom and I would watch all the
Yes.
whole thing on Saturday night, and then would end with Are You Afraid of the Dark? And some of
Yes.
those really freaked me out too. Like some of those were a little cheesy, and then there were others that like really like blew my mind. And I'm sure if I watched them again today, I would have the same reaction. I'd just be equally as creeped out. I remember there was like, a cult in the woods. There was the clown in the fun house,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they brought in some good, like that was the heyday of Nickelodeon when they really like they also went to dark places and they were willing to do that. So
I honestly I miss kind of that era in the late 80s, early 90s when there was a lot of shows and films. Like I miss kind of like that era of like Disney movies where they didn't really care if they like scared the shit out of children. And they weren't worried about it being too dark. Because I mean, I grew up watching stuff like Return to Oz, which was made by Disney, and it did horrible at the box office because it scared the shit out of people, and they weren't expecting it to be so creepy. But like there was a certain like kind of short era of Disney where they didn't really care. They're like, let's just do it. And I feel like sometimes I feel like we don't give children enough credit, and we don't want to like scare them to the point where we just don't have anything even remotely scary anymore. But like I loved stuff like that when I was a kid.
Yeah, so that's a really good point because children do love to be scared, and they are fascinated with death or violence or even sexual themes. Like children are aware of all of this, and it's really interesting today. Like one thing I didn't ever get into was video games. So I've missed years and
Right.
years of like shoot 'em up, Grand Theft Auto, and all of those things that I know people still love to play today. But I just found it very ironic that we sort of slowly started like whitewashing kids' entertainment into this sort of like we must helicopter them away from all danger, but yet they are exposed to like these really violent video games where they are like perpetrating violence. And then, of course, if you turn on the news, if you go to YouTube, if you let them go on the internet, then of course, then they're seeing all sorts of, there's cyberbullying. There's a million different things now that kids deal with that I feel like they're confronted with violence all the time. I feel like we had the opportunity when we were little to be exposed to that and also sort it out for ourselves. We didn't have the social media influences, but you worked through those things as children by reading these scary stories or watching these Disney movies, or, you know, like children have the right, they deserve to be able to explore these themes and not have a book be banned or not have people go back and change words in old books in order to fit different,
Exactly.
constructs and things like that. So
I think
it's
with
interesting, isn't it?
yeah,
It's interesting.
I think with anything that um is scary, any just horror in general, I think there's something very therapeutic about that, which is I've learned that more as I've gotten older is, and there've been all these studies that have come out that have said that people who, are have like depression or anxiety find comfort in horror films. And I think that the reason for that is that it's sort of similar into why people are fans of roller coasters and some people are. It's because you are experiencing that fear, but you're in a very safe environment. Like you're watching a film and it scares you, but you know you're safe. It's on the screen. And it really is, I think there's still some of the 80s satanic panic going on where a lot of people are like, oh, horror movies are evil. I don't understand why people like them. But there's so many people I've met that it is a comfort. And it's not because we're all like psychopaths, it's because there's something about experiencing that fear in a safe environment, which is, I don't know, it really is therapeutic. I know I already used that word, but I can't think of another word.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's like it's a comfort watch. It's a comfort measure. Like it always has been for me, and I experienced. I think people also they throw out the word, trauma, childhood trauma, and stuff like that. I think is different flavors for different people, but um, some of us, a lot of people who have experienced like genuine trauma, not to like disparage anybody else's definition of trauma, but you know what I mean, like people who have real traumatic or abusive physical, sexual,
Right.
abusive experience when they're kids tend to find their way to horror as well, and find that sort of space where they can, again, you're working through it. I much prefer watching a horror movie than than drama. So some dramas are too real for me and too close to home, and I don't need to watch the tragedies of life play out in front of my eyes because I've lived with so many of them. Look, the chair popped up in the background.
I
Sorry,
saw that. I saw that. I thought I was
distracted.
going crazy.
It's a ghost. It's the ghost of our chair. Um,
It's going back
but
to haunt you.
right, like I don't like. There's I have so much family drama or family trauma that it's like, well, I don't need to see that in a film, but I can understand how that might be cathartic for people as well. Um, I would rather see something that is just like a digestible kind of like it's either going to be lighthearted or it's going to be like wacko, slasher or something like that. And there's really like nothing in between for me. I'm like, if it has dinosaurs in it, I'm good. If it's got ghosts in it, I'm good. If it's about like a killer clown, I'm good. Anything else, like I don't have the attention span for it. But I agree. So um, yeah, you're right. There have been so many studies that have been done that show that and I think that people who are also into horror generally tend to have like a higher level of empathy and tend to be like pretty like rational people, and then it just you got to get the lead out.
Right. And I think that it's crazy to me that in this day and age there's still people like judging people on being fans of horror. And I realized, you know, just how wrong, because I kind of grew up in an environment where they basically were just telling us that kind of just all movies in general were evil, but particularly stuff like that. They were like, "Oh, that's evil. It's like a portal to hell." And so
Yeah.
like my first movie watching experience, I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna die." Like I was like, "Well, this is a good."
Yeah.
But it's crazy to me. I went to last year my first horror convention and was met with such a wave of like love and community and kindness that I had never experienced before. And I was like, man, if only some of these people that judge people for horror movies knew what this community was like. And I mean, I know every community has its like people who are assholes, but like I just was completely blown away by how amazing some of these people that I met are in the horror community. And
Yes. So, uh, did I do something? Am I still here?
you are
Yes, I'm
still
still
here.
here.
You are still here.
I have to
So
stop touching buttons.
it's
I
okay.
tried to
It's
make it better
okay.
and I made it worse.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. Nothing changed. It's exactly the same as when you started, so you're good. You haven't I would let you know if you like vanished or
Okay.
something. Um so being
Okay. Well, because
as
it's my stupid night technology.
it's I understand. This is the the risk we take when we do Zoom because like I've been to different Zoom appointments like for doctors and they were like this before where we were both like cutting out and trying to communicate. Yeah, it sucks. But anyway, since we were
Yeah.
talking about horror, I wanted to ask you, and I feel like I do know some of the answers to this, but what are some of your favorite horror movies, like the ones that you can rewatch over and over again?
Sure. So let me start. Let's go all the way back. So my all-time favorite, I guess, I don't know, scary movie is A Haunting. So the 1963 version,
Yes.
starring what's her name? Oh, I always forget. Let's discover because I got hung up on this in another interview recently. I was like, yeah, A Haunting from the year, the thing. Okay, so The Haunting, starring Julie Harris. God
Oh my
Almighty,
God. I
and it's
could
got Russ Tamblyn in it, and yeah,
yes.
so love that, love that, and in
Honestly,
that vein, yeah.
I let me just interject for a second. I did not think that I would find that scary, and I remember my dad introduced me to it, and I watched it. And the part where she's like hearing all the noises in the bed and like that girl's beside her and she's like holding her hand. And then she
Yes.
realizes that she's on the complete other side of the room and she's like, whose hand is I holding? I had to leave the room
Yes.
because I was so anxious that I thought I was going to throw up. So I really like that movie. Like
Yes.
it freaked me
And
out.
when they're in the bed and they're watching the door like push inward and like the door handle shake, that's peak horror. Is like, I like
Right.
older horror movies because they just let things be what they are. There's not this need to explain everything and tie everything up neatly with a bow. Like there's so much space in that movie. There's so much room and I just oh so I also loved The Changeling with George C. Scott, which I think
Yes.
in the 70s.
It, it's
That
so
movie is another
good.
one with the wheelchair hovering at the top of the staircase and stuff. That's another one that's just got so much space.
Hmm.
And The
Also,
Omen, of course.
George C. Scott is amazing. I love him as an actor.
Yeah, he's just yeah, like the OG. But
Hmm.
and then my favorite. So as far as like horror, like a slasher, whatever. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first one that I ever watched and is my all-time favorite. This 1974 version. Um, my mother took me to see because she couldn't get a babysitter, so she took me to see Silence of the Lambs in the movie
What?
theater when I was probably like 8. I don't know how old I was, but she got a lot of weird looks for that. And then I just sat there and was like,
I I
munching
can
on the
I
popcorn.
can
Um,
imagine.
but
That had to be an
we had a gay old time. It was fine. I was
I could not possibly
I was
imagine
like,
seeing Silence of the
I don't
Lambs when I was
remember being
8.
bothered.
Yeah. But
Yeah, they
that's such
definitely did not spare me. Yeah. And then I got away from horror for a long time because um I have sensory or had, the horror community when I wanted to be into horror in my early 20s, the horror community was not a really welcoming space for women or young women and I felt uncomfortable and it wasn't just it was toxic in all the ways that that we all know it can be. And then it was also just like that sort of like know it all kind of like, do you even like horror, name 3 horror movies kind of
right.
thing. And
Oh,
I'm
I
like, I
hate
just want to
I
find people that enjoy what I enjoy and don't
right.
love or just hate everything or stuff like that. So I got away from horror for a long time. I also had difficulty with like the sexuality in horror was hard for me. I had to do some inner work on that so that I could learn to appreciate and enjoy that for what it is instead of seeing it as like violence that is directed toward me that I am not supposed to be part of instead of like this idea that I remember being in movie theaters when I was a kid and not a kid, but like a teenager, seeing Scream. And if there was a scene where like a woman was being tortured or assaulted, all the guys in the theater would shout out and like, hooray and all that kind of stuff. I was a young, teenager, young lady in the era where like people just referred to girls as bitches, just women as bitches kind of thing. And like, you know that whole era, that like early 2000s era was like a really weird time. I feel like we were
Mhm.
like more enlightened in the 90s than we were around then. So I just got away from horror for a while because I was disturbed by like the sexuality in horror. Now I'm like a big advocate for it and I'm a big advocate for people exploring that. But I came back to horror very recently, so in the last couple of years, and that was, as you know, through Terrifier and sort of not really, that wasn't like a tiptoe, that was like jumping back into the deep end and sort of like, all right, I'm going all in, and then really getting into that and really embracing the community and experiencing what you did, which was like coming back to a space where people were like very welcoming and very happy to have you there, and a lot of women and women supporting women, and I was like, oh, Like, it was everything that I had always wanted it to be. So that has been a nice, like a really good experience.
And I'm so glad that you came back to horror because like I completely understand what you were saying, and the 2000s were fucking weird time, honestly.
Yeah, a
So
rough time. Yeah.
it was a very rough time. But okay, jumping from horror to back to the paranormal. I know that you've
Yeah.
done, History Alive. You guys have visited a lot of places all over. What are some of the your favorite places that you've visited, and what have been the most uh, active, if that makes sense?
Sure. So I've gotten to see a lot of really cool places, and I filmed a lot of shows over the years. One of my favorite memories was for the RIP files, which you can find on Amazon Prime and everywhere. Um, Season 2 of the RIP files, we filmed at Moundsville State Penitentiary, which has been pretty well investigated by a lot
Ooh.
of people, and a lot of the shows have gone. The other shows have gone there, and we did an episode there. I actually, Jonathan and I got engaged across the street from there at the Turtle Mound. So there's a big Native American burial mound directly across the street from the prison that has like a center, like a learning center, and this historical building and this complex and these beautiful gardens. And so we actually got engaged right there that weekend. In front of that mound, and if people can see that, I think I'm looking at our engagement photo right now, like you can see it on Facebook, in
That's
front of
so
the mound.
cool.
But anyway, it was pretty cool. It was definitely a story. But so one of my favorite memories from that is that they took me and Kenna, this other person who was like an investigator on the show. They put us in Red's cell. So Red was one of the most infamous like inmates there, and his cell was supposed to be particularly haunted, so they wanted us to go sit in there and do like a solo filming thing where they left us alone with the camera and walked away for like 30 or 40 minutes. And what was interesting is that this was a low high production values but low budget production. So the minute they left us alone, the camera died,
Oh no.
and Kenna and I, and no cell phone service. So
Oh
Kenna and
no.
I are like, well, I guess we're just going to sit here and think our own private little thoughts for the next 40 minutes till they come back, because it was dark. I mean, we weren't like, let's go and run after them and let them know. We were sort of like, I guess we could have done that. I don't know why we didn't do that, but we were just like, I guess we'll just sit here. Um, and so it was kind of interesting. We just sort of sat in silence, but I'm glad that we did. We were giggling for a little bit, and then we were quiet. And I'm really glad that we were, because we were in this entire cell block by ourselves. We were on the bottom floor, but there's 4 stories. So, um, if you walk outside the cell and look up, you can see all the way to the top. And it's such a huge, and everything debilitated, everything, paper, wallpaper and paint cracking. And every once in a while you would hear like a loud sort of sound of the building settling. It's a huge empty building. But when we were sitting there, just kind of in this cell, just tuning into everything around us, it's dark. Our eyes are adjusting, our ears are adjusting. We just started to hear all of the night sounds that you might hear in a prison if you were actually just there. Like people shuffling around in their cells, footsteps, heavy boots like a guard walking up and down the hallway, men coughing, like just like
Oh
clearing
God.
their throats, just like a kind of just like low whispers, very natural sounds of human activity at night, right? People settling into their beds. You could hear it plain as day. We sat there for a long time, and just, I remember like holding on to each other, because it was very spooky but very fascinating. I don't think the camera would have picked up any of these sounds anyway, but we were like, man, I wish we had gotten this, on something. But I felt like it was
Right.
better that we did because we just tuned our senses in and experienced that. And it was really, really cool. And so that will stay with me forever. Um, and I experienced something similar to that in another prison recently, actually. Sometimes when it comes to paranormal stuff, it's like the small things that end up being these big, profound experiences. I was at Crown Point Jail in Indiana, which is where John Dillinger famously escaped from, allegedly using like a gun that he had fashioned out of a bar of soap. um,
Wow.
and so he was a wily one, but he was held there for a little bit, and that's what the place is famous for. It's a very tiny jail. And you can visit that now in Crown Point, Indiana. It's like a nice living history place. They do a lot of events there. Um, and a similar thing happened where I was there with a bigger group of people, and but we're all kind of standing around, and you could hear these heavy boots like boof, 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 walking up and down the block, coming in our direction. And we've got flashlights and everything, and we can see that there's nobody there. And it was so cool. Like sometimes you hear when you're on these investigations, you hear all kinds of sounds and you're like, ah, is that a spooky sound, is that a ghostly sound, or is it just this old ass building, right? You don't,
Right.
sometimes you don't know. So this was so cool because again, it's like these are heavy boots of a guard walking up and down the rows coming toward us. I could hear it as plain as if you were walking toward me, right? But I can see that there's nobody there. And it was just like I get like a little chill like thinking about it because it was just so cool. um it was just a really neat experience.
Have you had any other kind of paranormal experiences that weren't at any of the places you visited, like just in, your regular life, or has it just been visiting those places you
So
were
I
investigating?
have I've had a
Really?
lot of um I've had a lot of personal paranormal experiences just in life, and I much prefer those. And when I go places, unless it's for a show or for a program or for an event, I never say like I'm an author and I write about the paranormal. I never say that. I just go totally incognito and just kind of like, wow, I wonder if this place is haunted. And then I let people tell me their stories or be like, yeah, you know what? I've heard this or this happened to me because it's much more fun to kind of go undercover and be incognito. And then I don't
Right.
want to talk about myself. I don't want to talk about, me. I want to hear like what happened to other people here and just in their everyday life, not like in an investigation. So I have had a lot of experiences, but I've also had stuff follow me home from
Oh, goodness.
investigations, which is interesting. Like it's hard to sort of describe or categorize uh, what that is exactly because it'll be like a day or two of activity in our apartment and then it will dissipate, or we will physically
Ooh.
say like, I this is great, I acknowledge you, hi, I need you to leave because you're freaking me out, right?
Yeah.
In the last place that we lived, we we went to this conference in Galena, Illinois, which was fantastic. Galena is a great haunted town too. People who live in Illinois will know Galena is a wonderful town. We brought home, I don't know if this had to do with it, but we went to this paranormal conference and we did stuff around town, and we brought home this antique plate that had these pumpkins on it. It's just this really beautiful, like fun, festive autumn thing. Um, Not sure if that has to do with it, but in like the 2 or 3 days after that trip, this is when our dog Oscar was still alive. And this was in our old apartment. So Oscar slept in the bed with us until he was very old. He stopped doing that. But his whole rest of his life, he would sleep in the bed with us. So we were waking up in the middle of the night for like the 2 or 3 days after this event, hearing Oscar pitter pattering around the apartment. So very mundane. His little nails on the hardwood floor, right? Walking to his water
Yeah.
dish and like lapping up water. noodling around in his food bowl. So you could hear the food rustling, going to his bed, like his little bed, and rustling around. And I was waking up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh, why is Oscar awake? Sitting up. And then as I'm sitting up, there's Oscar curled up in a little ball between me and Jonathan.
Oh God.
And so I know I'm getting like a chill again thinking about it.
My
And again,
God.
I'm looking with my eyeballs, right? And I'm like, our apartment is not that big. It was a
Yeah.
big studio apartment, but you could see from one end to the other. And I was like, there's nothing here making those sounds. And so I thought I was a little crazy, right? So it happened again.
Right.
Jonathan
Oh.
sits up and Jonathan sleeps like the dead. Like he will sleep through the end times because he just like could, but he sat straight up and I was like, we're both like, hear that? Do you hear that? And we're like, yeah, it was so bizarre. And so finally I said something, like, and you feel crazy, right? You feel like insane. You're like, hi, I acknowledge you. Thank you for visiting us from Galena, Illinois, in Chicago. Welcome to Chicago. You have to go. You have to leave. You
Right.
must go now. This has been fun, but I have to scream now. So, and then it stopped. So it was like I think it happened for 2 nights, and I think some other little thing happened, like one of Jonathan's guitars, like plucked itself, like in the middle of the night, kind of like one
Ooh.
long note, which was also creepy. I'm like, come
Yeah.
on, like stop scaring us. But
Please.
whatever it was, whatever or whoever it was, wanted us to think that it was Oscar. And part of me was like, well, that's nice. It wanted us not to be afraid. And then Jonathan was like, or it was, it wanted to freak us out and knew that that would be what would like really get us. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, so things like that will happen occasionally. It doesn't happen every time. It doesn't happen everywhere we go, but we'll get a little visitor, and then it will dissipate. Whatever it is, the activity will dissipate after a couple days.
Are there any more are you still doing History Alive, or was that like a
That's a hard question to answer because I think that was our big shebang. Like I feel like that episode that came out is sort of it's its own like standalone documentary.
right?
So it could be that like it will start up again and then we can pick up right where we left off, which I would love because I love those folks so much. That's such a great group of people to work with. Um, but it's also sort of like it was designed to be, well, if this was everything, then it's tied up sort of neatly with a bow. So I recently filmed at the Old Baraboo Inn with Nick and Tessa Groff from previously from Ghost Adventures and other programs that they've done. So that will be the next thing, I guess, that comes out. But beyond that, I don't have any like
Right.
big investigation or filming plans right now. So
Are you able to say anything else that you're working on as far as like writing or any other projects that you've got going on?
yeah, so we'll have season 2 of our podcast come out next spring. So we're going to be filming that in the winter, and then that will come out again probably late spring, similar to this year. Spooky Story Boutique came out in June, so it was like just in time for a spring release. Um, and then I have my another book coming out in this fall, which is the follow up to my first book about the Old Baraboo Inn. It's another book of ghost stories from that place, and
Ooh, nice.
I'm really excited about this one. This is all people's personal accounts. So I
Oh, I
compiled
love that.
everything. I curated, edited all of these stories. I threw in some of my stories. There's some new history and new updates about the building and about Baraboo that were fun to share, but otherwise it's just people in their own voices telling their stories. And so that will be out. And that's kind of the two big things that I've been working on.
Oh, that's so exciting. And I hate to cut you short today, but I think that about wrap things up. I am so glad that you came here, especially because you're tired. You didn't have to come here, and you did.
I
I'm
am
so happy to.
tired all the time, but I'm like summer tired all the time. But no, I'm like summer tired where I'm not like nothing's nothing is wrong. I'm just sleepy. I'm just like sleepy all the time. So it's not, I'm like, it's kind of a good
Right.
sleepy. I was telling my friend I'm kitten sleepy. I could just keel over
You're
at any
you're
second,
relaxed. You're just
curl up.
real relaxed. Yeah.
I'm kitten sleepy. I'm not like exhausted, depressed sleepy.
Yeah, because there's a
So
difference. So like
there's
I completely get
definitely a
that.
big difference, but I'm really excited for you and your podcast and all of the stuff you have going on with all of your cameos and your opportunities and things that are coming up for you right now. And
Well,
I'm really
thank you. I
proud of
actually
you.
thank
And
you. I'm glad
keep
someone
going.
is.
You're killing it.
Um
You're doing great with these interviews and like keep
I
at it.
just actually booked a couple more people in the next couple of months just yesterday, and
Good.
I'm fingers crossed, but I am working on being a podcast guest on another horror podcast. So
There
I
you
will.
go.
Yep,
This is how it starts. You plant these little seeds, this little they grow and grow and then they pollinate and then you got the garden. So it's
exactly. I don't remember the whole thing because it was like fucking 3 paragraphs long, but I remember seeing something on Facebook yesterday that like really resonated with me, and I actually shared it. Damien Leone shared it as well. I think David did too, about just,
yeah.
what you have to go through like being in this business and acting, and how the I wish I could remember her name because she's
I
fantastic.
saw
The
it. I saw what it
Yes,
was. Yeah, it takes a long time to get the engine running. And even then after your big thing. So it was the actress from Obsession
Obsession,
who
yes.
yeah, in between the time that the movie came out and now she's like a huge star, she's still,
She was like dog walking and
doing
doing all
all
this other stuff
odd
for money.
jobs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And
success
so
is defined in all different types of ways in this business, whatever it is, if it's podcasting, storytelling, writing, music, acting. There's so many different ways to be successful and to feel like you're successful too. That's like my little nugget of wisdom. So,
and
yeah.
there's and I've already been told this like a million times, is there is a lot of waiting with this. I mean,
Mhm.
even if you something you make is a success, it's like in the case of Indy from Obsession, like, they made the movie, but then obviously you didn't see any kind of results from that until later. She
Right.
was still struggling, and that's a lot of filmmakers, a lot of actors have to go through that. But that really kind of um hit me like a truck yesterday. And then almost immediately after that, I heard back from several people about interviews. So I'm like, okay, this is a sign from the universe that I need to like shut the fuck up and just keep going. So
There, even as far as I am into things and into my career, you have these high highs and these low lows, these months where everything is just coming up Millhouse, right? And it's the summer of George, right? You're having a great time, you're having a gay old time. And then you hit like a weird dry spell. And then no matter how much you've already done or what may be coming, you sort of as soon as there's this little dry spell, the imposter syndrome starts to kind of creep back.
right,
It happens to everybody, no matter how I think far along you are, how successful you are objectively or on paper, or how you feel about yourself, it's just kind of like the way it's just gonna these feelings will be with you forever, in addition to the feelings of achievement and accomplishment and excitement. So
right. And I think I don't know why, but for some reason, as many times as I've heard people say like these same things to me over and over to try to encourage me, it did not reach me until yesterday.
well,
Um, but I'm
I'm
glad
glad
that
it
it
reached
did.
you. It reached you. It's yeah, it
That's the important part.
yeah.
Sometimes it just takes a random Facebook post to reach you for some damn reason.
That makes sense. Yeah, it is. It's those weird things. It's those weird little nudges from the universe. You never know what it's going to be.
Yeah, and it hit me like a slap in the face. And sometimes the universe just needs to slap you in the face and for you to learn something. And I'm glad I got slapped. But thank you again. Thank
Of
you again
course.
for
Yeah.
coming on
Thank
here.
you.
I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Go have more caffeine.
I will. You too. Okay. Thank you.